Hey there, my name is Vladimir and welcome back to my channel. Well, I'm not even surprised that it's raining again, but luckily, we have already filmed test flight and hopefully we've done it. So now, friends, we're going to have some tea and then we'll be telling you about an amazingly good plane, Cessna 337. So basically, I want to start at the heart of this. I really like this plane. I flew a lot on it and similar ones, and specifically on this model for a long time. I guess about 5 years ago, I got back from LA. I mean, we had a Los Angeles-Kiev flight, and the route was long and pretty adventurous though. And by the way, that's the first plane I've ever flown across the Atlantic as a pilot, and it was the Cessna 337. So now, I'd like to share with you why I'm so fascinated with that plane. Well, almost 3,000 of these aircraft were produced back then. About 500 of them were designed in the military version of the O2, and the remaining 2,500 were manufactured in the civilian version. And in many ways, this airplane is unique. It differs from others in its rare concept. The plane is pretty noteworthy, and certainly has both disadvantages and huge advantages, and a little bit later we will talk about it more. This plane is quite strong though, and one of its great characteristics is that it was in the service of the U.S. Army, and overall it was made in France as well as the French Armed Forces. So essentially, it's hard to call a safer aircraft in general aviation than a Cessna 337. And a little bit more about its feature. Yeah, although it certainly loses in speed, because the classic configuration of a twin-engine aircraft, it's much more efficient, much faster, because the aerodynamic qualities are higher. However, on this model, one prop works in such a way that it is necessary to organize some air intakes. And this, in turn, creates additional resistance and slightly reduces the efficiency of the propeller. But with all this, in the event of engine failure, you will have no problems, as our model does not have a peak torque, which is usually found on the regular twin-engine aircraft, such as this Piper Seneca. And thus, you have one less problem, and in the case of any error or failure of one engine, nothing will interfere with you. And I've learned this lesson personally. When I was flying this plane for almost 2 hours with one engine failure. Yes, I have to admit that it was my fault. We did not completely leak the sucks, and I totally admit my guilt. And this mistake led to the stopping of the rear engine. In the end, a loaded plane dragged us for 2 hours without a problem and dragged us to our destination. We instantly pressed the button, find the nearest airfield, and it was 300 miles away. I mean, there's no particular way to fly with a single engine. You won't notice the difference. If you have turned the propeller into a position along the airflow and fixed the blades so they don't create resistance, okay, it would be harder for the plane to keep flying. Yeah, the speed will decrease. But friends, it still keeps flying. And the most dangerous phase of a twin-engine plane is takeoff. I mean, when you take off, the plane doesn't have enough time to accelerate. You're still close to the ground. And suddenly, you have an engine failure. If you haven't responded quickly to this situation, to put it mildly, you'll have problems. On this plane, that's not a problem you're going to have. Security is its priority. Alright, he does lose to classic airplanes on speed, but it's not a huge loss. With all this, you have a cruise speed of about 175 miles per hour. The consumption of this particular version, with two Continental engines of 210 horsepower each, is about 17 gallons per two engines. I'll tell you, it isn't much, considering the plane allows you to take on board with you 4 people and a lot of luggage, make a short takeoff and landing. And most crucial, flying over the forest or mountains with all this stuff and passengers, you will feel completely safe. The main point, safety and reliability in this plane is visible literally everywhere and in everything. I mean, many systems have been duplicated, and even though, I'm guessing, it was all done on a plane to please one military man to become a customer of Cessna, it ended up being appreciated by ordinary people. And again, out of the 3,000 copies that have been released, just over 500 have been used by the U.S. Army, and the rest have been used for civilian purposes. And so far, this plane can be found at almost all airfields because the people who put safety first, they prefer this plane. And perhaps the only downside of this plane, or rather the bright feature of this plane, it is quite noisy. Because the rear propeller works with the front propeller duct jet, it resonates, and so sometimes you honestly can't recognize whether it's Cessna 337 flying or large 4-engine Antonov An-12. I've often heard from some people that supposedly the rear engine is overheating. I don't know. I've never heard anything like this from the owners of the Cessna 337. And personally, I've flown this plane many times to California, Arizona, and Florida, where it's usually extremely hot in the summer. I've never had to deal with this problem, even for the back engine just to start to warm up. Never. Yet, such stories are most likely spread by people who do not really fly such planes. There are also those who believe that Cessna 337 doesn't conform to the classic canons of beauty, and still, there are people who find this bird attractive. And I'm more like the second ones. It's super easy to drive and very comfortable. And the most crucial thing is that Cessna makes you feel safe even when you fly over dangerous places. By the way, we once landed on Cessna 337 in Faroe Islands. We had a headwind of 47 knots. Yeah, it wasn't a dream landing. It took a little effort, but eventually we landed fine. Well, the Cessna 337 is an example of a classic aircraft with classical avionics inside. The plane really is equipped with all the necessities for flight in instrumental conditions. I mean, logically, there's an air horizon over there, a speed indicator, 2 instrument landing systems, as well as a Garmin 530. And this part over here is equipped with the engine control system. It should also be pointed out that this plane has a long range. I mean, the plane will easily fly more than 1,200 miles. It means, rather, you'd like to visit the WC, then the plane will stop because of the fuel shortage. Here we got all the same as on the regular plane with a thrust lever. See, here is signed, front and rear engine. One more interesting detail. There are recommendations for taking off in this plane. First, you have to slowly turn on the rear engine, gradually, so the plane gives a push and then you gradually pull forward the front engine handle. Why is that? Because there have been cases where the pilot, not being able to see the rear propeller, did not notice that the rear engine had stopped, and the pilot continued flying on the front engine exclusively and noticed that only after a while, flying without the necessary thrust. But even with all this, a plane can fly very well. By the way, if you read the pilot's operating handbook, POH, it says that the rear engine produces 20% more thrust than a front engine, because it is a pure stream. I mean, this engine is not blown by a jet of fuselage. I also really like the way the retraction of the landing gears is going on this plane. The back struts are going backwards. It's not difficult to figure out how it works. That is, there is one hydraulic cylinder that controls the whole process. The system is smooth and reliable, and the wheel on the front strut is usually turning around into a particular position before reaction so that the space inside there could be saved and also less resistance. A huge number of modifications of this aircraft were created. I mentioned military modifications earlier. There are also models with reclining doors. The doors open down as a staircase. This model, by the way, turned out to be very hermetic. There is also a turbocharged version. Unsealed planes that can fly high, as well as hermetic versions. They are called Cessna 337P, and this plane can easily fly up to 20,000 feet without the necessary oxygen equipment, which allows you to use altitude as an opportunity to increase your flight speed. In many ways, that's a unique plane though, because if you start talking about small airtight aircraft, it's perhaps a rare plane, able to make a short takeoff and landing being hermetic at the same time, all in one. So as you can see, it has many advantages. And let's also take a look at another interesting feature of this airplane. There's an air intake up there that's cooling the engine. It's got the airflow that's distributed around the cylinder and cooled. And the temperature inside there is regulated by opening or closing the shutter. The price of this aircraft can be very different. It depends on the condition of the plane and its configuration. They have both cheap and expensive. I mean, there are models full of modern avionics, the price of which can reach $300,000. But these are the super cool ones. Still, I suppose a good Cessna can be purchased for $100,000 to $150,000. And it's going to be a good plane, a really good plane. And to me, it's one of the most affordable twin-engine airplanes ever. You get a plane with the so-called inline engine, West Inline. I mean, all the engines are in the same line, so there's no asymmetric thrust in case one of them fails. That's an incredibly big plus in case of an emergency. And the most interesting thing is that Cessna in the U.S. even has a separate rating, a twin-engine inline. And in 3 hours of flying this plane, you can get that rating quickly. But as a rule, everyone still gets a full rating on classic aircraft at first, and consequently then have the right to fly this model. However, having received an inline training, you won't be able to fly a multi-engine aircraft according to the classical scheme. Well, guys, come to the sky. Fly such wonderful planes that surround us. Thanks so much for watching this video. I'm happy to see you on my channel. Hope you liked this episode. See ya!